The next few slides will look at the thyroid. Too much thyroid activity results in hyperthyroidism. Too little thyroid activity results in hypothyroidism. In general, the thyroid regulates our body's metabolism. With the thyroid, you can look back to slide 3 of this section, where it shows the relationship between the thyroid, pituitary, and hypothalamus. And some of this information I'm just going to talk about. It's not in the typed out notes section, but on the left of the slide here, you have different characteristics of a person who would have hyperthyroidism. On the right side, it's basically the opposite, someone who would have hypothyroidism. Hyperthyroidism, you have boost metabolism. You have a rapid pulse, increased metabolism, hyperactive reflexes, emotional lability, GI effects. Right? It's hypermetabolism. Your GI is actually going to be in overdrive as well, and so you can have diarrhea. And maybe not necessarily diarrhea all the time, but more frequent bowel movements. Because of the increased metabolism, your body is naturally going to be giving off, breaking things down through catabolism, and so more heat is going to be given off. You can have warm, moist skin. That moisture will come from sweat. And some examples of where you might see or why you might see hyperthyroidism would be because of Graves' disease, and that was what I was diagnosed with maybe 18 years ago. You can have a goiter, and then you can have thyroid cancer. Hypothyroidism, lack of metabolism, right? Slow pulse, decreased metabolism, sluggish reflexes, placid, phlegmatic, GI effect, lack of activity, so constipation. You can be cold, you can have dry skin, and some characteristics here would be myxedema. You can still have a goiter, but it would be non-toxic. Your thyroid is enlarged, but it's not working, and inflammation of the thyroid. So, because I've actually experienced both of these, all right, yes, I was diagnosed with Graves' disease, which is hyperthyroidism, and that is going to be often treated with medication. And if you have too much medication to suppress the thyroid activity, then you can move over here to this hypothyroidism. Not really a good place to be, right? Some people might enjoy the hypermetabolism, meaning, you can eat anything and not gain weight. And I certainly experienced that. Prior to knowing that my thyroid was actually going out, maybe the 6 months before I knew there was a problem, I really could eat anything. And I remember going out to eat one night with my in-laws, and my father-in-law wanting to try some of my, or have part of my huge piece of banana cream pie. And I remember almost stabbing his hand with my fork because I was actually still so hungry, even though I had just eaten dinner, that I didn't want to share any of my pie. And he made some comment of how on earth could I be eating so much. When my thyroid was out completely, I was probably consuming 5,000 to 6,000 calories a day and still losing weight. I wasn't exercising because my pulse rate was so high naturally that even going up a flight of stairs, I would be winded. I would have to take a break from vacuuming our apartment. Right? The apartment wasn't that big, 3 rooms total, and I could only do about 1.5 rooms before actually having to take a break. So, not a good thing. You have to think about the issue with your heart, and that's the major issue, the major concern with hypothyroidism. Not necessarily the extra metabolism that you might be able to consume a few extra calories and not gain weight, but really it's the effect on the heart. All right, hypothyroidism, again, I've been there too. And you hear people sometimes say they look at food and they gain weight. And I was at that point too, where I would eat once a day. I would eat dinner, and I would still be gaining weight. And sluggish reflexes. I experienced rather severe depression when I was at this stage of hypothyroidism. Very fatigued, but it was more of a lazy fatigue. With hyperthyroidism, I was fatigued. Yes, I would go to work, come home, sleep for 2 hours, eat, go to bed, wake up at midnight, open the refrigerator door. For my light source, drink 2 cups of milk, eat a container of yogurt, close the refrigerator door, go back, sleep for 6 hours, wake up, eat. And that was my routine for, I don't know, probably 6 to 8 weeks of my life. So here I was extremely fatigued, but it was because of this hypermetabolism, huge heart rate. My resting heart rate was close to 90. Just waking up in bed, that would be my heart rate. All right, but over here, not a lot of energy, fatigued, yes, depressed, yes, and it was also not a good place to be. All right, so what you have here, I like this figure on the right here because it gives you a snapshot of a comparison between hyperthyroidism over here on the right side, hypothyroidism on the left. So you can actually see the size difference of this person. All right, with the hypothyroidism, you actually do gain weight because your body simply doesn't utilize the calories that you pull in through food. Here, you've got extreme metabolism, and you start losing weight. And at my low point, I won't actually tell you the value on the scale that I was, but I lost 20 pounds from where I was at. That was pre-children, so I was obviously not nearly as heavy as I am now, and I was actually about 40 pounds lighter at the height of my thyroid craziness. But I lost over 20, or right about 20 pounds, and I call it my Auschwitz days. Extremely thin, and it wasn't a healthy thin either, because I literally I was skin and bones. Not quite at the point of hospitalization, obviously, but I couldn't lean against a wall because it hurt my spine, because there was just my spine and skin. There wasn't any extra muscle or any extra cushioning from that natural thin layer of fat that you might have. Yeah. So, and I couldn't walk upstairs either. We had an elevator at my work, and for some reason I was with my lab members on the first floor, and my boss said, "Stairs or elevator?" I'm like, "Elevator, please." I honestly could not walk up 4 flights of stairs. Heart failure. All right, so major issue is your heart, tachycardia. You've got weight loss, diarrhea, intestinal issues or side effects here. Sweating, you sweat a lot. I was in a meeting one time, and I was so incredibly hot, and I had to be the last one out of the room because the skirt that I was in, it was almost like a denim skirt, and it was colored, and you could see the sweat, and I almost looked like maybe I had peed my pants, because everywhere underneath me, my rear, my legs, where there was contact with the chair that I was sitting in, was just wet because I had sweated that much. Hair. This was another fantastic thing. I went 6 weeks without brushing my hair, almost. When I did brush my hair, I didn't brush my hair very often. I would go outside onto our apartment balcony because I would lose so much hair. I would just, it was awful to have to clean that up off the carpet or the bathroom floor. All right, so then opposite, you can still have loss of hair, but your hair is going to be very brittle, and so it breaks off, and it can be very short. You can have edema underneath the eyes, which we'll talk about. Heart failure, but it's the opposite, bradycardia. Constipation, cold intolerance, you get very cold, and you're kind of cold from the inside out. You can have edema and muscle weakness. And I actually had edema in both cases, in both scenarios. The edema when I had, actually I don't remember, but my edema was extremely bad. My coworkers, if I was brave enough to show some of them, were actually quite impressed because it was very severe. All right, so over here, you have your thyroid. All right, and the first example is going to be Graves' disease. So this is what I was diagnosed with. And what happens is you have antibodies that are going to come bind to the thyroid, the TSH receptor, so thyroid stimulating hormone receptor. And this is actually TSH itself, the proper hormone that is secreted from the pituitary. And this is what it's supposed to do. It's supposed to come and bind to the receptor on the thyroid and then activate the thyroid to produce T3 and T4. Well, in my case, I had autoantibodies. Antibodies, these IgG antibodies that somehow developed cross-reactivity to the receptor and came and bound to those receptors and pretended to be TSH. And so I had huge amounts of T3 and T4 being secreted. The T3 and T4 would go throughout the body, do its thing, cause the hypermetabolism, but it would also go back to the pituitary and say, hey, stop making TSH because the thyroid's already active. It doesn't need more TSH. And so when I had my initial blood tests, my TSH levels, this guy here, was below detection. And the amount that could be detected was 0.006. So 6 thousandths. And I had less than that. So much of this that the pituitary was not producing any TSH whatsoever. Right, then you can also take a thyroid pill to decrease further activity and to minimize that. All right, then you can also have a goiter, all right, that's going to cause hyperactivity of the thyroid tissue. And these are small nodules. And then you can also have an adenoma, cancerous cells that are not producing or not functioning properly, and therefore naturally producing too much T3 and T4. So the T3, T4 levels go up and you have hyperthyroidism. All right, so here's an example of a goiter. All right, that huge lump there is a very large thyroid. And then just finishing off Graves' disease, a couple of characteristics. I'll go through these real fast. Here you have what's sometimes called bug eyes. It's protrusion of the eyeballs. And this occurs because there is an accumulation of orbital fat, inflammation that's occurring, and edema of the orbital contents. So the real name besides bug eyes is exophthalmos. All right, the condition also manifests itself by changes in the nail beds, which you see here, onycholysis and spoon nails, and these are very brittle. When I started showing issues of my thyroid condition, the spoon nails were one of the first things I noticed, and this was about 18 years ago. The number is wrong in your notes. But to show my naivety at the time, I had just bought some fingernail polish and had put the fingernail polish on my nails, and then when I took the fingernail polish off, this is not extreme as what I saw, but I started to have very brittle fingernails, and I really just thought that I had bought very cheap nail polish and it was starting to eat away at my fingernails. Next part, we'll start with hypothyroidism.